With the magician, we have stepped off the cliff and landed in the material world, the field of opposites, the field of duality. Before I dive into the magician, I just wanted to give you an overview of the structure of the rows of the major arcana. The structure repeats from row to row. Sometimes there are changes as you go down, and I'll talk about those. But basically, there's some kind of power and reflection that happens in the first two cards. Then there's a transformation that happens through the middle three, and then a release, and then an achievement. That's generally the way it works. So the first column, or the first card in the row, is power, and it kind of moves from power to confrontation as you go down. The second column is reflection, and it goes from reflection to withdrawal as you go down. And then this central transformation portion, the first card of the transformation is nature, the second card is wisdom, and then the third card is divinity. And as we go further down the rows, these experiences get deeper and deeper. The sixth column is a release, and then the seventh column is achievement, and that's pretty consistent throughout the rows. So that's the structure that we're going to find ourselves in as we progress through each of these rows of the major arcana. So now let's jump into the magician. With the magician, we have stepped off the cliff and landed in the material world, the field of opposites, the field of duality. What do I mean by that? The spirit world that the fool left behind was undifferentiated and harmonized. There, all was one. But here in the material world, in the time-space plane, our view is distorted, and we see things as dualities, as polarities, day, night, good, evil, man, woman, us, them, and so on. But since this is a material world as opposed to a purely spiritual one, the first thing we have the ability to do is to act. And action is what the magician is all about. He raises the wand in his right hand to heaven, through which he receives divine energy, and he directs it with his left hand into the world. What this means is that we are conduits who can bring divine energy and inspiration to bear in the material world as meaningful action. The realms in which we can bring this power to bear are represented by the four tools of the magician's trade laid out on his table: the wand, the cup, the sword, and the pentacle. Wands represent the realm of action itself. Cups represent the realm of emotion. Swords represent the realm of intellect, and pentacles represent the material world. These four realms of action form the basis of the minor arcana. They represent the realms of everyday experience in the material world as opposed to the archetypal experiences expressed here in the major arcana. Let's look more at the symbolism within the card. Instead of the one iconic flower held by the fool, we see the magician in a garden filled with flowers. The growing flowers represent the beauty of the experience of life grounded in the physical world. They're colored red and white, just like the magician's robe. White is the color of spirit and purity, and red is the color of action. Those colors speak perfectly to his mission of turning spirit into action. The infinity symbol above his head indicates that the divine energy that he taps into is infinite. There's another interesting thing to note about this symbol, however. It is a clue here on the first card that shows us how to carry the divine of the spirit world into the material one. As I said, in the spirit world, all is one, but here on the physical plane, our view distorts what we see into a field of opposites, into dualities. The way to maintain the divine is to embrace both poles of the duality. Imagine that one pole of a duality sits on one side of the infinity symbol, action for example, and imagine that the other pole sits on the other side of the infinity symbol, say contemplation. This suggests that the way to engage in dualities like this is to loop in between them, back and forth, first experiencing the one, then the other, indefinitely. This way we don't get unbalanced and stuck on one pole. By so doing, we come as close as we can to carrying the oneness of spirit into the material world. In the case of dualities like good and evil, going around the quote-unquote evil pole might mean having an understanding of the things that we may consider evil. Really, I would say there is no good and evil. In my view, there are only actions and karma, but that's for another card, a later step in the journey. One other note. In channeling power from the divine to the material, the magician doesn't hang on to or contain the power, he just channels it and discharges it. In life, I feel it's important, if we feel an energy, to discharge it and not to hang on to it. If that's not advised for one reason or another, then I recommend acknowledging the energy and discharging it into ground, so to speak, just letting it go. That way we don't retain it within us, where it can accumulate undirected and do damage. And that is the magician turning divine energy into action. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I wish you well on yours, and I will see you in the next video.